All right. What's going on, everybody? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional, aka Soul Brother number one, reporting for duty. Today I have General Scott Dingell and Dr. Paul Dyer. General Scott Dingell might be having some technical issues with his screen or what have you. I don't know if he can hear me. General Scott Dingell, are you here? He might be having some issues. He should go out and then come back in.
As he's doing that, why don't you read his bio, and then we can get right into it, why we're having this show today.
All right, let me pull that up.
Because one of the things we want to talk about the show is there's so much going on, but it's about moving forward, right? It's about seeing ourselves and seeing other people who we don't normally see. Sometimes that's just going to be better for everyone. But go ahead, read his bio.
Right. Okay. We have Lieutenant General retired Scott Dingell, 45th Surgeon General of the United States Army. Hold on a second. Lieutenant General retired Scott Dingell is the 45th Surgeon General of the United States Army. Oh, here he is.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Yes, sir. I hear you now. You hear me?
Test 1, 2, 3.
I hear you. Do you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, that's
Dr. Dyer?
Yep, I can hear you, sir.
Test 1, Dr. Dyer. Okay, I'm going to sign out.
I can hear you.
Back in.
Yep. Sign out, sign back in. Okay. So to go through it again, we have Lieutenant General Scott Dingell is the 45th Surgeon General of the United States Army and Commanding General of the United States Army Medical Command. He was commissioned as a Medical Service Corps officer and served on active duty for 35 years and 7 months. He retired in March 2024. He is the first graduate of an HBCU, first administrator, and second African American male to serve as a Surgeon General in any service in the 248th year history of our nation. As the Army Surgeon General, he was responsible for 122,000 soldiers and civilians with a budget of over $22 billion. General Dingle has commanded at every level from company, battalion, brigade, and commanding general of the United States Army Medical Command. General Dingle is a native of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and is a distinguished military graduate of Morgan State. All right. Mm-hmm. Military graduate of Morgan State.
What do you think of? I mean, you're reading it, and I know you got it from before, but what do you think about that as a person, Ron?
Well, obviously he's accomplished. That's number one, highly accomplished. He's also, I would say that he's handled and managed a lot of different things that the average human being hasn't. And so I would assume that he's highly intelligent.
This is like a dead spot, so I'm not getting no signal.
Yeah, so
Test
but
one.
How
Hello?
often do we as black men
Why your dog
can we hear you, sir?
Up,
Yeah. Hello.
Gee,
Okay.
you are
Hello?
killing me, man.
Yep. Hold on.
I'm gonna go up here. You wanna go with me or are you rolling? Are you going in the house?
All right. So we're gonna wait until he gets his
So
thing situated.
yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at, in all the things we do, and no matter how we reach out and touch community in so many different ways, we often, as young black men or young people, really don't see people achieve that much success. We hear about it. You could say YouTube rappers. I don't know what you want to say. How do you see that sense of success through a time period where we have always called struggles, right? And discrimination or anything. And yet we still have people complain about who would constantly complain about to blame others for their lack of success when hopefully they just reach out and ask for help and follow the breadcrumbs some people have laid before them and ask the questions and learn. So those are my thoughts. You know what I mean?
Okay, okay. Well, from my experience, like I grew up in Harlem, right? So like to see like doctors and teachers and people in the military, like my grandfather, he was in the military. So like, we have, I'm used to hearing stuff like this, like great accomplishments from black men, so to speak. Dr. General Scott Dingell, but I understand you hear me, brother? You hear me?
There we
Yep,
go.
there your mic's on.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, I
sir.
can hear you. Yeah.
I am so sorry. I had to get in my car because where I was at, we could hear you, but we couldn't connect. So I jumped in my car to drive out to get connection or connectivity. So hopefully you can
It,
hear me now.
we can hear you. Is it the reason why you didn't have good connection because you're a Q and
No, that's just the opposite because it was the Q power that was only giving me the opportunity to try to tie in. And so all the other latency issues, it said, okay, you got to get out the house, get in the car. So I jumped in the car, drove up the hill to so we can get connectivity, and the Q power came through. I am so sorry.
I that's okay. I tease because I'm a Mason myself, and I know Ron has pledged too. But my light given brothers are each
What did
other's.
Ron pledge? Ron, you pledge what?
No, well, actually, I went into the lodge. I went to the lodge some years ago as a Mason.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
in other
So
words,
I know
both
you
of you
want.
all want to be Qs. Just saying.
I would like for you to give a shout out to your brothers across the nation, and let them know that you're on, and you can send them a good luck and best wishes.
After to all the men of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, friendship is essential to the soul. Omega men are 10 times the normal man, but all black men are 10 times the normal man. So it's all good. It's all relative, regardless of fraternity, sorority. We don't divide up like that, but it's
Mhm.
just a blessing to be here where we are at. And there's a lot of work that we have to do to get where we need to be.
Okay, got you,
And
got
and
you.
I and I think I want to honor that. I also want to honor your service in public. I was a service member myself, but where you sat, it was in a whole different rooms than where I sat. And I think this conversation is so much for young black men about how you suffered or how you got through people discriminating you, and yet you kept moving on. I think all people, not just black men, black boys, or whatever. I think all types of community who are struggling need to hear that from a man like you who's been at that pinnacle.
And absolutely, because if we don't tell our story goes untold. And often, as we are growing up and looking for mentors and idols and people to emulate, when we don't see us, then we go
Mm-hmm.
unseen. And one of the things as I was coming up, it wasn't a large catalog of African American leaders to keep you inspired in spite of
Mhm.
racism, difficulties, challenges. And so often, you had to dig down inside ourselves to make sure that we were not quitting, not giving up, staying focused, sticking to it, getting it done, like Tuskegee Airmen, their mantra, because we knew that it was something bigger than us and that we had to just keep going.
Got you. Okay. All right. Now I want to talk about your experience. Like
Okay.
what kept you inspired, being that you said in your area you didn't have, examples like that. Like for me, I grew up in Harlem, so I always saw like different. I saw teachers, people from the military. You saw everything, like everything you could possibly imagine. Pretty much, growing up in Harlem and then going to school in Manhattan and then going to Washington Heights, you saw like a different things to keep you inspired. Some people went the bad, people went the wrong route, some people went the right route. So so I've seen it, but you said you didn't really see that coming up. So how did you, how were you inspired?
So ours was different. I'm from Maryland, so I'm from the DC suburbs, Prince George's County, Maryland, black, predominantly black, African American county, Upper Marlboro. And so as we were coming up, in our neighborhood, it was all about the neighborhood. It was all about us. And so we often pushed and inspired ourselves because we were athletes, in my neighborhood, a lot of us. And we pushed ourselves and we challenged ourselves. My best friend since second grade, who's with me now, um, we said we're going to be the best. And whether it was, football, basketball, baseball, we pushed each
Mhm.
other. And then we took that mentality as we were growing up. Um, we saw things coming from, again, Prince George's County, dealing with the rest of the state of Maryland and other things. And
Mhm.
we said we had to be the best. And so we started setting a standard of not settling from anything but being the best and dominating in on the football field, on the basketball field, on the court, on the track, no matter what it is, the baseball field. We said we were going to be the best, and that kind of drove us, the the neighborhood peer pressure, um, to excel,
Mhm.
and those same tenets, you know, kind of crossed over into the college level, being a state champion in track and field or winning whatever it may be. We had a passion through sports for me that helped us and taught us that, hey, look, you competing,
Mhm.
and when you compete, you don't give up. You compete and you play to win, and we play to win. And that mentality transferred over to my 35 years of military service, of never giving up in spite of racism, in spite of opposition, that it's a game that you have to win and that you cannot quit.
Mm. Got you. So what was your home life like? Mom and dad?
Now, I
Yeah. Did you have your mom and dad there? Did you
So
grow up with
so
your mom and dad?
so kind of sort of, yes and no.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
Again, we grew up predominantly here in Prince George's County, Maryland. My dad worked two jobs. He was retired from the Air Force, and then worked as a police officer at night, Capitol Police,
Mhm.
and during the daytime had another job. So he was always gone. And then my mom had a job during the daytime, and then commuting in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. She wasn't here during the daytime, and so we were, what they call latchkey kids, from the
Mm.
time we were little, where you come home and
Yeah.
you got the key to the house to get in, you know, ain't no supervision,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so our supervision was the neighborhood, and us in the neighborhood all grew up together because our moms and dads were African Americans working in Prince George's County, very successful middle class lifestyle, but that left them being away, but yet us raising ourselves, in the neighborhood and throughout the DC,
Yeah.
Maryland, Virginia area.
Okay. So how did you escape? Okay, so I always ask this question on this podcast because this era was important to me, right? The crack era, right? So and when you talk about DC and Maryland, those areas when it comes to crack, that era, that 80s, that early 90s, it took New York, DC, like the whole East Coast by storm. So I want to know, how did you avoid that being a latchkey kid?
So and not just crack, but it was PCP, it was angel dust, it was
Mhm.
love boat, it was whack, it was Hinkley,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
lamb's breath, it was Buddha, it was all of those things that were just rolling through, running ruckshod through the community and the neighborhoods,
Mhm.
and for us,
Yeah.
and again, I can't say that for all of my peers, and my partners, but for me, again, I came from an athletic family. And so initially coming up when, um, before
Yeah.
you pre-team and people were getting involved with all those things that we just mentioned, um, my mindset was, man, I'm gonna be a professional athlete. I'm an athlete. I'm good. I'm really good. I'm the best. And I tried to stay away from those things, but it was um, the desire to be the best, the desire to go to NFL, to be a state champion in track and field, and those type things, and the dedication, because we were always in practice, year round, because we were just seasonal athletes, whether track, football, basketball, baseball, no matter what it
Mm-hmm.
was, we played. And so that kind of helped us to stay away from those in our neighborhood, and the gangs that were not athletes were the ones that were getting caught up in those things, and
Right.
then those that were athletes, not saying that they did not do it, but the passion and
Right.
commitment
Right.
of being an athlete helped us to stay away from those things, or not get consumed by the drugs and the gang, and the neighborhood.
Okay.
I,
Okay.
so I so Ron, I have a question. So, and again, I was just such an honor you being on the show. I just really think it's amazing of all the stuff you really have done for yourself and for this country. But when we talk about moving past discrimination, you were a leader in place of so many types of men, and you ran into a issue where people had issues. How can we teach our communities to move forward like you did as a leader, even in your own company or your battalion or whatever, because of a defect of thinking?
Well, it starts with the mindset and believing in yourself. If you read my bio, yes, I did 35 years of service to the military, and then as a medical service corps officer with three master degrees, and all these different things. I was the first African American male and non-clinician to be designated the Surgeon General in the history of our nation. So you're
Mm.
talking over 250 years, 253, 4 years of the history and founding of our nation. And I was blessed to be the first administrator operator to lead as the Surgeon General.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Secretary of Defense, the President, the POTUS, the Secretary of the Army, Chief of Staff of the Army, when I was a two-star general, said that, hey, look, we want leadership and we want the best leader. Um, and they chose me. Um, tremendously blessed to do that. But it all went back to um, me
Mhm.
setting a reputation, standards, and actions that led to um, building great teams and success that showed that leadership and teamwork were paramount. And
Mm,
that's what, at my time of going to a three-star general, the president and the secretary of defense wanted. It wasn't my goal to be, it's only but one three-star general in Army medicine. Look, I was a two-star general. It wasn't my goal. I'm like, hey, I'm good. I don't need to be at the top. I want to go down here and relax, retire. But it was the bosses that said, no, what our nation needs is leadership. We're going into COVID. We were going into all these different challenges of change, and we need leadership, leadership, and so it was that leadership requirement that just opened up at the right time. But at the same time, me as a young African American boy from Upper Marlboro, Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, who never, anybody would have thought or, thunk it was possible, but yet living dreams of just being the best and building teams opened up that opportunity for me to be blessed to be selected as, the Army Surgeon General.
mm. Okay. I have a question. So, how did it go from sports into that? So, like, what inspired you to get into the military?
So, true story. Um, 1% of our nation serves in the military. And I think
Yeah.
that many people have the wrong impression of what military service really is, to include myself. Because as I was coming up, and my dad served in the Air Force. I was born in New Mexico. We went to Japan, Misawa Air Force Base when I was less than 1 years old. And then we came to Prince George's
Hmm.
County, Forestville, Maryland, when I was 3 years old. And then I literally grew up in Maryland, Prince George's County. I had no desire to come into the military, but yet what happens is that 1% of families who serve in the military, they're the ones that end up coming in the military because they lived it, they heard their parents talk about it, and they follow in their footsteps.
Mm,
Me coming up, initially as an athlete was just the opposite. I told my dad, I am not coming in the military. I am not going in the military. I ain't serving in the man's army. I ain't putting on no
Yeah.
boots. I ain't standing in no lines. I am not doing it. And that was my mantra coming up, um, through junior high, through high school, and we're a military family, and going to college, I was heavily recruited, in football and track and field. And my dad wanted me to go to West Point. And, he would like, and he's from White Plains, New York. And so, right across the bridge from West Point. And so he was like, yo, be an officer, it's not too many African American,
Yeah.
officers. Everybody's enlisted. To be an officer is a big deal, Scotty. And he always was planting that seed. I'd be like, yo, dad, I ain't doing it. Nope, nope, nope. Now I'm a senior in high school. I'm being heavily recruited by all these schools across the nation. My dad's pushing West Point. The coach from Virginia Military Institute came to recruit me. And this is
Mm.
the late 80s. And they were still all male getting ready to go to co-ed. And so the
Mm.
coach comes to the house and he's talking to me and my dad, and he says, hey, look, Scotty, you need to come. You'll be a great running back here. You'll fit into our program, and I knew it was an all male school. And so, I said, hey, look, coach, I said, hey, you got girls at your school? And he said, no, we don't. I said, nope. I am not going to the school with a whole bunch of dudes. I ain't doing it. Absolutely not, And I was doing it being, playful and facetious because I really meant it. And then my dad had a conniption. My dad lost it. My dad lost it, man. Most the maddest he's ever been to me in my life. And then my dad was like, you throwing away opportunity that not too many people have that are in our community and in our race, and you can be the difference. And I'm like, Dad, I ain't doing it. And I made a commitment to my father. I said, look, Dad, look, I promise you, let me go to the school that I want to go to, and I promise you I will take ROTC. Even though I don't want to, but since you say it's a good thing, I'll do I'll do it. And so I was going to Syracuse at first to play football, had a knee injury, ended up going to Morgan State, running track. Then I got back on the football field, had a great years there, um, and ended up getting my commission, through ROTC. But it was because of that promise to my dad that I did the Army, and it wasn't my plan to go active duty. I said, man, I'm gonna go in the reserves, and I'm gonna go play professional football. We were going to Pittsburgh and Dallas at the time at a Morgan State. But I left a year early because my wife and I had our oldest daughter when I was a junior in college, and she was a senior, and I had to do something to take care of my family. And I said, okay, you know what? Me and Coach are battling. I'm coming in the Army and I'm walking away. They didn't think I would do it, but I did it. And that started my military service as a way to take care of my family, because my parents instilled that in me. Look, hey, look, you need to take care of yours, not us, and that led to, again, 35 years later in a three-star general.
Nice.
So I got to tell you, one of the things you said was, I'm not going in to serve with the man. I said the same thing. When we were growing up in the 70s, that was it. Like, why would I go serve the man? Like, and my family were big on that. My dad was drafted in Vietnam, but he's like, don't serve for the man, don't serve for the man. And so that mantra you're talking about has always been there. And yet I said I was never serving, never going, and by default I was discouraged about what was going on over here, and I went into a recruiting office, signed up, and seemed like 100 years later, there I was. I'm leaving out of airplanes and stuff like that. But I called Dr. Wilson from Morgan State, the president, and let him know that you were going to be on the show. And I sent him a text because we became very good friends when I was out in Maryland. So so I have great warm feelings about Morgan State because of the president and the vice chair and things like that. I've done some talks up there at their college and their science department. So I sent them a text, and then I sent them an email, and I'm kind of upset with him because he didn't come back to me right away. So, but here's the thing. I think some people, again, going back to why people are so hard to get past difficulties, what they call, again, back to discrimination and feeling like they can't break through. That's something we have to correct in our community, because you said a lot of things Ron has said about building community, about keeping focus. We talked about the brain part, about how to rewire your thinking, and still we have difficulty breaking through as a community together.
One of the things that, as you look at the history of um, us as a nation and us as a community, or lack thereof, was that there's never been a time where we have been 100% in unison behind the same cause effort. We may get majority at time, we may get 50% at time, 40% of the time, but there's always been divisions and divisive intentions that are designed to keep us apart.
Mm.
Um, the mentors that I have, in which one is Dr. Wilson, the president of Morgan State University, um, they have always poured into me to live your dream. You live your dream, not the dream of others or what others may think, but live your dreams. Martin Luther King said it when he was talking to Philadelphia about having a blueprint and a plan,
Yep.
and then walking, then crawling, and then running, and then, if whatever you can do, fly, but just keep moving. He talked about, and then we got to keep moving towards our dreams, regardless of what they are. When it deals with, success. And so as I was coming up, I had a dream, to be the best. It was athletics, and then it went into the law field and the legal field and
Yeah.
all these different things. But then that's where, preparation and success is not something that's luck, but it's something that's worked on all the time. And so through the good, the bad, the ugly, the hard times, the setbacks like we're experiencing now in our nation, we've been here before, you know, but it's due to those who came before us that persevered, that
Yeah.
worked through, that kept constant, that
Yes,
did
sir.
not give up on your dreams, your passion. You got to
Yeah.
have a passion first on your plan. Martin Luther King said you got to have a blueprint or a plan, but then you got to have the passion behind it and the
Yeah.
perseverance to not quit, the persistence that when they say that you can't, that you keep doing it and knocking on the door,
Mhm.
and the perfection to put the time in to be the best. And when you're the best at what you do, you can't be denied because of what you brought to the table.
Mhm.
And so, my thing has always been live your dream. We got to live our dreams. And in spite of, man, I've ran into a whole bunch of crazy, racism and things throughout my career in my professional path. But my thing was always like, okay, you know what? I'm a competitor. I see you, I hear you, and I'm gonna doggone punch you right back in the face, and I'm gonna win and show you, and not let somebody else define me, or my mentality.
Mm.
And that's what it takes for us to be successful. Nobody defines who we are, you know, nobody but us, and we got
Yeah.
to define it. We got to define it.
Right. So now you said what inspired you to get into the military was a number of things, but the main thing was your family, right? Your family.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
so now, but with all of these accomplishments, right? How were you able to do all of this and like serve in the army, stay focused, and like how did you stay focused? Was it still the inspiration from your family?
It was one several things that once you come into the profession, and I think it doesn't matter what
Mhm.
the profession is, whether military, civilian, athlete. When you're in a profession, it's a race to be the best. And so now I'm in the profession, and my mentality is that, man, I'm going to play to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to compete. And so as you're competing and you're giving your best, it's a competition. The strong survive. And so it was that drive to, I'm taking care of my family. I've made this choice, this turn, but you know what? The game is just beginning. You got to play this game to win. And I played the game to win. Again, it was the athletic, the athlete in me that says, okay, look, it's time to compete. Don't quit, don't give up. You know, keep going. And that's what I did. And that just opened up doors of opportunity that led to success by the grace of God.
Gotcha.
Were you so the question? The question I have for off the top of that, of what Ron was saying, is when did the self awareness come? Was there like a thing that hit you over the head because you were focused always as he's a young boy, but when did the self awareness come of being focused was something I was doing. You know what I mean, Ron? You could do things, and then all of a sudden you realize what you are doing is what you want to do.
Right. 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 He just clicked off. I guess if service went out or
What
he hit the wrong
But
button or
what
whatever.
what about for you though? Like there's things you're doing, and then there's self-aware of the things you're doing. That's different than just doing because you want to be at that next point.
Okay. So for me personally, like I consistently, constantly work. Um, and it's just a drive that I have because like he says, I just want to be the best at whatever I do. Just the idea of being the best is the motivation to keep going. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it doesn't because I understand because some people work hard, right?
Hmm.
Some
Hmm.
people work really hard at trying to be something, whatever that is, right?
Hmm.
Whatever that is. But they have no internal reason of why they're doing it besides the ethic of working hard. What I mean is when does that self-awareness come from you where I'm like, I know exactly why I'm doing it, not because I'm doing it.
Well, to answer your question, for me, is like I feel like I come from this part of
Yeah.
Harlem, and I don't ever want to go back.
Right. So that was the drive, but when was the awareness of this is just who I am? You see what I'm saying? After you have like that focus point, right? That
Mhm.
like someone wanting to lose weight, I want to look like this. I want to get into this, or I want to look like this. They have a picture or whatever vision they have, or they want to run a company and they like when I get to be, making $60,000 a month, I really made it. So those are focus points. But then
Mhm.
there's a time I know for me when I realized exactly who I was, even in the journey of what I was doing.
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
Like I understand the drum beat. My mom, you got it. What's my mother saying was what's next? What's next? So the action of what's next. Thanks back, sir. You're back. So the question I had to ask you is when did you realize you were self-aware of what you were doing was part of who you were? Right? You knew you had a drive, you always had that drive, but then there comes a time when you're like, this is exactly who I want to be. This is exactly who I am. That self-awareness combined with the drive, it makes a total to me makes a total difference of where you end up.
100%. And so as you had mentioned, as you had brought that question up before, again, we got cut off. My mind automatically reflected back to the phrase birds of a feather flock together."
Mm,
I literally got, again, I kidnapped him with me, my best friend from since I was in the second grade. The second grade, I'm 60, he's 61 now. And so, we've been best friends for like 55 years. And so, um, our relationship going back to second grade and playing on the playground, playing tetherball and kickball, and us coming up together, the the bond, the friendship, the characteristics, the drive, the passion, all those things were developed from our friendship. We came up in the neighborhood. You
yeah.
had the big gang, and then we were the little ones coming up from the gang on the block. You know, but yet we were friends. In our age group that influenced each other, and our influence, we pushed each other from the time we were doggone 5 years old. That we're gonna be the best. That, hey, look, do it this way, Tom, do it this way, Scotty. Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna dominate this. We started talking that
Yeah.
from the time we were 5 and 6 years old. Never stopped coming up, whether if it was in the band and music or basketball team, football team, track
Yeah.
team. It didn't matter. It was still us flocking together and pushing each other. And so
Mm,
the characteristic was instilled there in the neighborhood, you know, but and then once we started becoming, on the varsity basketball team from junior high and high school and state champions and track and field, and we started, winning. The realization is that, look, what we say and define ourselves is it. And
Yeah.
all of us weren't state champions, but a few of us were that had that gift. But yet you could not tell us anything when we walked in, whether it was going to school or to a party, whatever it may be, that we wasn't the best thing that was going to walk into through these doors, and that we were going to succeed. And so it started. So back to answer the question, it started from the time I was little with my best friend Tom Wilson, Tyrone Harris, and the Little Ridge, the little gang that was growing up in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. You know, that was not necessarily following the same pattern of older um, gang members of the neighborhood. You know, but yet we defined it and we said this is it, and that led to that self realization that you talk about when we said, we can do this. Look, let's be the best. And it just went from one level to another.
Yeah.
A few of us went to college because we had that athletic talent, you know and we went there and excelled, and it just led one thing to another. And so then for me, I'm like the only one that went in the army or the military, and it was that same mentality. And everyone says, like, man, General Dingle, you're just a different leader. I'm not a different leader. I'm leading the same way that I
That's who I
grew up
am.
with a team mentality. It ain't big I little you, but it's we. And then I've always instilled that, and that has what led to my path to success. Regardless of race, gender, color, nationality. Look, I'm gonna build the best team with the best talent, and we're gonna take over and be the best thing out here. And that was the mentality.
Okay.
I like what you said because it's that we that people have a hard time gathering. But then you said something. It was who was also around you that developed that we. I'm going to say a good we, because there are people who go to other groups that do bad things, and that's a
Mhm,
bad we.
mhm.
But they go for the same reason. That's what's troubling. They go for the same reason, just different
Yes.
results. So sometimes when we're talking to people who says, I never I wish I had a Tom. I wish I had a Scott. I wish I had a Ron. I wish I had a Dr. Paul to be around. I didn't. I had these. So it's tough for me to separate from that. And yet that's why I'm stuck in this struggle right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
100%. 100% agree. Because we're a product of our environment, but yet we make the decision on if we comply or acquiesce to our environmental surroundings. I was the youngest, in our crew, and so they left beyond me. And then when their influence left, it was still up to me to make a decision to go left or
Yeah.
right. You know, and my moral compass, again, in
Ooh.
spite of being in, all black, community, everything was there, that was a negative influence, but yet it was my moral compass that said, you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. You know, my idol wasn't, the kingpin, the pimp, the drug dealer. That wasn't me. That's not what I wanted to be.
Mhm.
In spite of me may not having a role model of what a general officer may be, or a CEO of a Fortune 500,
Yeah.
we ain't know nothing about that. We 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 ain't know nothing. But yet the thing was, um, you know, live your dream. I didn't know what my dream was, but I knew that it wasn't going to be mediocrity. I
Mm.
knew that it wasn't just going to be staying in the neighborhood. We call it, in us, um, we say like, yo, man, we got some still stuck in the time zone, back in the day, that just can't leave that window. They're frozen there. I wasn't going to be that one. So it comes with, again, that personal passion and drive in spite of what you have around you. And to think, it helps when you got mentors,
Mm-hmm.
examples, and people who said, I've done it, I was able to get out. But when you don't have that, that's when you got to set your own sights, and live that dream. And like I tell folks, like, look, set your mark and set it high. Look, don't go low, go big or go home, and
Hmm.
then go get it. And as you go along that path, it's going to show you different opportunities, um, that are out there in life, and that's what happened to us and me.
All right, I want to ask a question. Your first career in the military was says General of U.S. Army Medical Command.
But not my first. So my first, as a second lieutenant, my first year in the military was as a platoon leader, in Fort Knox, Kentucky, of a medical platoon as a second lieutenant. My first assignment as a general officer was, commanding general of Regional Health Command Atlantic.
And what does that entail? What are your duties?
So as a second lieutenant, as a brand new officer just coming in the military, having done ROTC, I went through ROTC at Morgan State. I'm now in charge of a platoon. So as a 22-year-old brand new second lieutenant, a butter bar, you have your platoon, that group of about 32, to 40 individual soldiers who execute the mission under your leadership. Um, as a one-star general, the other job, that's your first job as a platoon leader, second lieutenant. As the one-star general over Regional Health Command Atlantic that you mentioned, that is me now as a one-star general responsible for all the medical professionals, doctors, nurses, dentists, physician assistants, veterinarians, everything medical that was in my region. So I had roughly about 50, 60,000 people, about soldiers, civilians, contractors that were under my responsibility. So hospitals, clinics, medical units, ambulances, everything in the Army belonged to me as a one-star, responsible for a region, and that was the East Coast. As the Surgeon General, now at the top of the pyramid, um, I was responsible for, over 122,000 soldiers, civilians, medical professionals, that work for me. Over 120 hospitals, a $22.1 billion budget. Everything now falls under me as the leader, as the commander, as the surgeon general, as the CEO, as the boss. And then I was responsible for everything: policy, discipline, training, leadership. Um, it all fell, under me.
Now, how did you handle pressure like that?
Um, there's, uh, not easy, um, because it was a tremendous amount of pressure, and, uh, whether being in Congress or on C-SPAN or in the Pentagon press room or in congressional hearings, or White House press conferences, there's a tremendous amount of pressure and responsibility that goes with it. How did I handle it?
Mm-hmm.
It was very tough. In a TED talk that I did, I talk about, leadership through, chaos, crisis, you know, um, you know, and competition. But the main issue in how you handle it is taking care of yourself first. You know, I tell a story about, the toughest time I had during COVID. was right after a White House press conference, and I made a mistake of saying something that I wasn't supposed to say in the
Mm.
press conferences on live national TV, and and I was just floored that I said it, and I just knew that I was going to be roasted, in the press and on the evening news, and I was so under a ton of stress and duress that as I walked back to my Pentagon office with my staff, I couldn't handle it. And I went back to my office in the Pentagon. I
Yeah.
shut the door and I went in. I shut the door in my office, and my heart started palpitating. I got dizzy because I wasn't eating. We had gone like about 24, 48 hours with no
Mm.
sleep, and I almost passed out. And it was at that point it hit me about, Scotty, if you don't practice
Wow.
what you're preaching, taking care of yourself so that you can take care of other people under the stress and duress of COVID crisis and
Mm-hmm.
chaos, and you pass out, you're not doing anybody any good. You're going to just be replaced with another general. And so my wake up call after that press conference was I gotta have balance in my leadership.
Mm.
It's gonna be tough, it's gonna be long, but I gotta find my equilibrium or my balance on life,
Mm.
professional and family, that work life balance of taking care of myself so that I can take care of others. Um, and just not going knees and elbows through the wall where you don't get those little things that mean so much to your family. And so that's when I kind of made a big turn in my professional leadership at the senior level to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And that has always been my watchword and my alert. And then I got a tremendous wife who
Wow.
keeps me humble. And she will tell me in a minute, like, okay, Scotty, pump the brakes. It's time for us to go to Cancun and get away and do the cruise. And so she helps also to keep me balanced and, my feet on the ground.
That's great explanation, inspiring. Uh, that's something that I've discovered recently about myself because I like to go, 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 and then I found myself getting sick every now and again, and I never used to get sick,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, you know what? Let me focus more on my own health because I am a fitness professional, massage therapist, and all these things. I'm telling people to eat
Yeah.
clean and get enough rest and all this, and I wasn't doing it. I wasn't doing that. And I started getting sick and dizzy like you and things like that, and I had to fix that part about myself. So yeah, another thing, Dr. Paul Dyer, you were talking about what was the click in my mind, the
Yeah.
self-awareness part
Yeah.
that I started, I understood my purpose at that point. I understood what my purpose was. Like once I said, okay, this is my purpose, this is what I'm here to do,
Yeah.
that was the click. So I just to go back to that question.
I really do wish, because let me ask you this: from where you sat in those rooms, the Pentagon and the office, and hearing all the verbiage and the words come out of people's mouths, as a country, can we do this? Can we pull ourselves together from just your thinking,
Mm.
your personal self? And if we can't pull this together as a country, without getting yourself on the evening news again and CNN, what do you think that we can do then?
I was very fortunate that the leadership that I had as COVID kicked off 2019, then going through 2019 to 2024, the leadership within the Pentagon, from the Secretary of Defense down, I had a tremendous relationship with them. And your ability to lead through crisis, chaos, depends on the support structure from the leadership that you have. And so for me, when I had the support of my leaders,
Yeah.
of my 4 stars, of the chief of staff of the Army, of the Secretary of Defense, of the President of the United States, they just turned it loose. Okay, Scotty, make it happen. Whatever you do, you do. We got your back. I had tremendous support, and that kind of offsets that tremendous stress level responsibility to deploy medical professionals around the world to mitigate
Yeah.
the millions of deaths that were happening from COVID.
Mhm.
That helped mitigate the speed to create a vaccine, or prophylaxis to help stop the deaths. Um, but you had the support, you know, of the leadership, and that synergy of support makes it easier. If I didn't have that support, it would have been that much more difficult, and we would not have had the success that we had. But when everybody was aligned and synergized behind your effort, that makes it easier. And there's no politics behind it. I was just tremendously fortunate and blessed at a time to lead where all the stars lined up and they got behind me. And so working through the stress and the duress,
Yeah.
was easier. But if I didn't have that alignment and support, oh my gosh, it'd have been crazy. It'd have been crazy.
Right. Got you. Makes sense. Makes sense. So support is key. Support is key.
Relationships
Drive.
matter.
You said
Relationship.
relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships matter,
Yeah.
regardless of your profession, your desire, um, your direction. Relationships matter.
Mhm.
Got you. Got you. On that note, thank you for coming out, General Scott Dingle. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. Paul Dyer, for bringing General Scott Dingle up. Thank you for the viewers checking us out. And we are out of here.
Thanks, sir.
Peace.
Peace.